Hello, welcome back to Polyfile. I'm Jeff. Today we're going to be talking about something which is not actually specific to polyamory, but it's something we talk about a lot within polyamorous circles simply because we talk about things like assumptions within relationships and how to deconstruct those in order to move forward and better understand ourselves. So this, of course, is far broader interest than just two polyamorous people. Today is all about the 5 languages of love. So specifically, what is this? What are the 5 love languages? Where does this idea come from? Well, it's actually, the term itself comes from a book published in 1995 by Gary Chapman called The 5 Languages of Love. And it outlines what he viewed as an exhaustive and universal list of ways people express or expect to receive affection from other people, and how they can determine whether they feel loved in an environment. Now, the thing to realize here is this is not a scientific study or anything. It was simply a model that he put together based on some things he'd observed. Similarly to the claim that this is a universal and exhaustive list, that there's always these 5 things. One could argue that maybe that's not true. However, this is a semantic detail. The ideas behind the list are actually very valuable, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So first and foremost, what are the 5 languages? Well, the first one is gift giving. A very simple thing to understand. I express love by giving someone who I'm close to something that I think I find valuable or they would find valuable, or the idea behind it is something they would find valuable. The second one is spending quality time. The idea that just being able to spend time talking directly or just kind of being close with and spending time directly in the company of someone you're close to is a way that you feel very, very close to them. It's a way you feel loved. This is not the same thing as sitting together while watching TV. That's not quality time. That's you just sitting there. No, this is direct time where you both have each other's full attention. The third one is words of affirmation. This is something like telling someone that they're loved or complimenting them on something. These are ideas which to them are very, very important, and they feel very connected to someone in that environment if they're receiving compliments along those lines or other words of affirmation. Fourth one is acts of service. Now this is usually beyond your basic sort of responsibilities of sharing a space with someone. This is actually trying to do things to help them out. They will feel loved by the idea that you're trying to do something for them to help them. This is something which is common among a lot of people and shows up that way. And the fifth one is physical touch. Now this is something which could be as simple as just kind of touching your partner on the arm as you walk past them just through the course of your day, not as part of a direct interaction. It could be the hugging them closely and frequently. It could be the idea that actually spending time together in sexual intercourse. There's lots of ways that this manifests, but it basically comes down to physical touch. Okay, so now that we've got these 5 languages, well, what does it mean? How do we apply these? Like, what are we actually talking about? Well, the idea is that any one individual will have usually it's looked at as sort of a primary language and a secondary language. This is how they're going to implicitly try to express their own affection to someone and how they expect to receive that affection from someone else. So that seems fine. Well, what's the value in this? What's the profound concept here? Well, it's the idea that we don't talk about what these languages are. We just assume everyone gets them. We assume we're all the same. And so if someone isn't expressing themselves to us in a way that we find valuable, we'll assume that they don't care, when it turns out maybe they're expressing themselves in their language. But because we don't speak each other's languages, and because we haven't thought about it, that maybe we should talk about what this assumption is, you're just going to be missing each other. You're going to be speaking languages you don't recognize. That said, you can actually move past these things if you do try and interact and actually communicate across these ideas. It's something you can actually choose to do. Sit down with your partner or other people who are close to you and make sure that you both understand what it is you find valuable about the interaction, how you express your own affection for them, how you expect to receive it from them as well. And this is something where, now that you're aware of these differences, you can actually pick up on when they're happening. And what's kind of the best thing for you to be able to do personally is be able to figure out, okay, I know how I experience love, I know how this other person expresses it, so if they're expressing it in their way, I can at least be sensitive to that idea. I now know that that's what they're trying to say. Even if it's not something I directly feel. Hopefully they'll work with me on this and I'll feel it my way too. But now in your ways of expressing things to someone else, you have to realize, okay, this is what they like. How do I express my affection for them in that language so they hear what I'm saying? How do they get this? Now, it's not going to be something that'll come naturally to you if you don't have the same languages. But you can work on it. You can realize, this is what this person likes. I like this person, therefore I'll do that thing. It's something you can actually take steps to do to enrich your interactions with them. So despite being an unscientific way of looking at it, it is a very valuable framework, and a lot of people's relationships do improve when they start looking at these ideas and trying to take them into the relationships they have to understand how to better connect to the people close to them. Personally, I also found this to be very valuable once I was introduced to this concept a few years ago. Suddenly looking back over the course of my life, all the relationships I'd had, the ones that worked and the ones that didn't work, it had a lot to do with how closely aligned these languages were. If we tended to express and experience things the same way, our relationships seemed to go very smoothly. We seemed really close, really connected. Whereas if they were very different, it seemed almost antagonistic or something. And it seemed to have to do with this idea that we were both assuming the other person would understand how we wanted to experience love, or maybe we thought that we all worked the same way. The reality is we don't. But once you talk to someone about this, you can understand how to do it in their way, and that'll help you move forward, and you'll get closer together. And the thing to remember here is that the way our culture is structured doesn't really help you understand this. First of all, there's the normal idea within sort of the monogamous mainstream of don't talk about relationships, we all know how this works, these are the rules, this is how everyone is, just do it that way, which is of course wrong. But so you need to talk about that. And further, within this realm, it even gets more complicated because some languages work better to other parties' advantages than to you or your partner. This is why some companies, for example, will spend a lot of time in advertising and marketing to convince you that the only way to express love for someone is through gift giving, because conveniently, I sell things that make good gifts. So they're actually moving you further away from this. Sure, that might work really well if the person you're trying to express love to receives love in the form of gifts, if that's how they perceive it. Otherwise, it's just going to go over their head and seem like an odd thing. This is something you really have to talk about. There's no one answer. Everyone can learn to get along better once they realize that there's this difference. So talking about this can be very illuminating, can be interesting. It actually can explain to you, this is how we can move forward together. So anyway, I hope that talk was of interest to people. I know personally it was something that I thought was very valuable once I picked up that idea, once I was exposed to it a few years ago. So I hope that you'll find benefit in it as well. Whether your relationships be polyamorous or monogamous, or even just if you're trying to understand the problems that exist within even your friends or other loved ones' lives in terms of how they interact with other people. There's a lot of value to realizing we don't all think of this the same way. And once we realize that, then we can start fixing things. All right, talk to you later. Bye.